Welcome to Food and Facilities, an online show for Planting to Processing magazine, formerly West Coast Industrial Solutions magazine. Watch what you read for safety, compliance, and innovation news within manufacturing, agriculture, food processing, and food and beverage industries. In this episode of Food and Facilities, we'll be discussing write-ups to build up with Nightingale resolutions and cell-based protein possibilities with Keller and Heckman LLP. Welcome to Food and Facilities. I'm Tara Sweeney, Marketing Director for Planting to Processing, formerly West Coast Industrial Solutions magazine. Make sure to subscribe at wcismag.com/subscribe for all innovation, safety, and compliance news for manufacturing, food and beverage, food processing, and agriculture. Make sure to reach out to our sponsor, California Food Producers. Visit them at clfp.com or call at 916-640-8150 and help them bring California's goodness to the world through labor laws, water regulations, Proposition 65, labeling requirements, regulating chemicals, drinking water, transportation, greenhouse gas, and cap and trade. I'm here with Natalie Rayner, Connie Potter, and Eve Pelonis of Keller and Heckman LLP, and they are here to discuss cell-based proteins with us today. Hello, everybody. How are you today?
Tara.
Hello.
Hi, Tara.
Can you give a little introduction to each of yourselves for our readers and listeners and a little information about Keller and Heckman?
Yes, thanks, Tara. So my name is Natalie. I'm a partner in our San Francisco office and work on what we call direct food and indirect food matters. So labeling, new product, regulatory reviews, all things related to food law.
Great, thanks, Natalie. My name is Eve Pelonis. I'm a partner in the Washington, D.C. office of Keller and Heckman. My practice focuses on anything related to the regulation of food. So that includes products that are under FDA, USDA jurisdiction, food safety issues, food misbranding, labeling issues. So really advising clients in different parts of the food chain, just how to navigate the food legal laws and regulations.
And my name is Connie. I'm an associate attorney, and I help both Eve and Natalie on their direct food matters. So anything having to do with food law, food ingredients, food labeling, and those sorts of things.
And then for our listeners and watchers that are unfamiliar with what a cell-based protein is, can you give a little definition of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So to kind of just set the stage for where we are in the food space, cell cultured proteins are considered protein foods that are created not from traditional livestock, raised in a field like we would normally think of meats coming from, but they're cells grown in a lab and cultured in a 5-step process that I can talk us through. So the first thing is that cell tissues would be collected in a biopsy, and the companies are going to select cells that are exhibiting traits that can be manipulated and grown in a specific manner, that are healthy and that have desirable nutritional traits. In the second step of the cell culturing process, if the cells aren't going to be used immediately, they'll be frozen in a cell bank for later use. And then from the cell bank, the companies can refine and select the desired cell traits that they wish to manipulate. Taking those selected cells from the cell bank, the cells will be transferred into a bioreactor that creates a controlled environment for the cells to divide and multiply. The bioreactor is going to control for settings like temperature, pH, oxygen, and other factors. And the cells are grown in what's called a growth medium that might have nutrients and other ingredients that help the cells grow and multiply. at a certain rate. After the desired number of cells have been grown in the bioreactor, they'll be removed from the bioreactor in the cell harvesting stage. And sometimes, in some cases, they'll be separated from a scaffold that's used to create a specific structure for the final product. And after the cells have been harvested, the companies will take those harvested cells and prepare them into a finished product. At that stage, they'll be adding additional ingredients such as, fat to mimic marbling in some cases, depending on the product that's being produced. And they're doing their best to mimic a traditional meat product. Some of the products that have been created at this point have been, things like chicken nuggets, meatballs, and companies are well on their way to creating products like a steak and other traditional meat products.
And the USDA and FDA have joint jurisdiction over this type of product. Can you give us a little more information on what their jurisdictions entail and the potential regulations that they will be having?
Sure. Yeah. So this is Eve. Because these are cell-based meat proteins and they're not derived directly from the animal, it creates a very difficult jurisdictional issue. So we started back in 2018 with a public meeting. Both FDA and USDA gathered information from the industry to try to determine the path forward. And then in March of 2019, they provided a little more clarity on which agency was going to have jurisdiction at what point in the process. So FDA is going to eventually oversee the cell culturing process until the harvest stage. So that FDA's jurisdiction would include things like cell collection, the development and maintenance of cell banks. All at this point in time, all the FDA food safety requirements would apply. So good manufacturing practices, hazard analysis, risk-based preventive controls, that would apply. And importantly, because USDA is the agency that has jurisdiction over meat and poultry products, FDA has jurisdiction over all other foods, including seafoods. FDA would have sole jurisdiction with regard to cell-based seafood products. So that is a distinction that's important and worth mentioning. Now, like I said, the harvest stage is where you see a transfer of jurisdiction from FDA to USDA. So at that point, as soon as the cells are harvested from the bioreactors, that's the point in time USDA is going to have authority and responsibility for the inspection of the cell-based meat cells. And so that's kind of what we know at this point in time.
And what kind of information will producers need for approval from these different jurisdictions?
This is Natalie. I think that there's still some uncertainty on this point, but we can look to the way FDA deals with other new food products and the way they think about generally recognized as safe or GRAS notices. And we can look to the types of information that are considered in other regulatory filings to FDA to get a sense for what FDA might expect for cell-based companies to submit when they're seeking regulatory approval. So we expect that FDA is going to be focused on the safety of all the inputs. So the cell growth media, for example, both the inputs and then potential byproducts of those inputs. So if the use of certain cell growth media ingredients might result in impurities of concern in the finished product, they might look at both those starting materials and those impurities. Potential microbial contaminants, those will definitely be evaluated closely. Also, the status of the food contact materials, like what's used in the bioreactor for the scaffolding ingredients that Connie mentioned. Certainly, if those are being consumed, we'll look to the safety of the composition of the scaffolding ingredients. But even if they're not consumed, I think that FDA will consider closely, like, are there any potential compounds that could migrate from the scaffolding to the cells that are being consumed. FDA is accustomed to thinking about the safety of food ingredients from a really holistic standpoint. It's going to be very important for these cell-based companies to have a strong understanding of the 100% composition of the finished product, not only from the standpoint of the cells that are intended for consumption, the protein ingredients, but also from the standpoint of unwanted impurities.
And then speaking of finished products, what kind of labeling and marketing regulations would there be?
We're still waiting to see where some of this will go, but what we know is that, there is a desire to use the animal-derived terms to describe these cell-based products. And so that has become a point of contention between the animal-derived industry and the cell-based meat industry. FDA and USDA have not come forth and provided any guidance in this space, but we have seen the states kind of emerge in trying to regulate or issue or promulgate state laws that would address this point, specifically in states where the meat industry has a strong position. You'll see laws emerge that try to restrict the use of the term meat on cell-cultured meat products. And so there is activity in states like Arkansas, Arizona, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, and Wyoming. So quite a few states have come up with their own way of handling this situation. The cell-based meat companies and also plant-based meat companies, because they are impacted by these laws as well, try to challenge these laws based on First Amendment grounds and have at times been successful. So there's a mix in how these have resulted. In the end, I think once the term is modified in a way, or if it is already modified and the consumer is not misled as to the identity of the product, then I think, we have a situation where there's no one is being harmed, and we'll probably end up in a place where qualified types uses of these claims will be sufficient. So we'll continue to watch this, and it's of interest not only to the cell-based meat industry, but to a lot of these alternative protein products like plant-based products. And it's definitely, we don't want to be in a situation where we have like a state patchwork approach. And so that's part of the concern, just like we had that kind of starting to emerge for bioengineered labeling. It seems to be emerging now for cell-based meat and other alternative protein products. So hopefully there will be some sort of federal guidance or standard that emerges that tries to unify the different approaches that are currently emerging. So we'll continue to watch for that.
And if our listeners and viewers wanted to get in contact with you about cell-based proteins or any other type of food regulations, how would they best reach you?
We have a website. It's khlaw.com, K for Keller, H for Heckman, so khlaw.com. And you can search for our names on that website and you'll get our contact information. So Natalie Reiner, Connie Potter, and Eve Pelonis, welcome to call or email us with any questions.
Thank you all for joining me today, and I look forward to discussing more regulations with you.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tara.
Bye-bye.
And you can reach out to one of our sponsors, Safe Food Alliance. When it comes to food safety, they've got you covered. Drop in and see them at their Food Safety Center in Kingsburg, or visit them online at safefoodalliance.com and check out their 360-degree suite of food safety services. And now we will have a moment of silence for our Black Lives Matter community.